English composition class. This is the first in a series of videos on how to write the essay. Now let's get started. This is at a glance what we'll be doing in this video. We will be covering this information, the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Here we go. The introduction should really feel like this. It should feel, spatially speaking, as something that goes from a broader perspective to a more narrow perspective, from something general to something specific, from a topical idea to a specific claim that you want to make. So you want to bring the reader in from their divergent perspectives to one convergent idea, which you are trying to prove. I mean, that is the goal of the argumentative essay that we will be writing. So when you're looking at the introduction, the first paragraph of your essay, the most important part of it is the thesis. But before you can get to the thesis, before you can get to this point right here, the very specific, clear claim, before you can get there, you have to lay down the foundation, meaning you have to begin with an intro idea that is broad in specific terms, but it also lays down the conversation. What topic are we discussing? How do we get to the thesis? That's the idea. You cannot simply begin with a thesis. It isn't customary. Why isn't it customary? Because when you begin with a thesis, what you really have is a lot of claims right from the beginning that feel unexplained. So you would rather begin with an idea, a topical idea that eventually finds its way into the thesis. Don't take too long, right? An introduction shouldn't really be more than, at least for the kinds of essays that we're writing, 4 to 5 sentences. You really don't want any more than 4, really. More than that, and then you probably should begin the body conversation. So begin with an intro idea, perhaps something like, since the beginning of mankind, the ability to exist in an ever-changing environment has been made possible mainly by a single factor, technology. I think I know what we're going to talk about, technology, right? Then I start narrowing my focus. It has worked its way into society as a beneficial source from which the common modern individual feeds off. So we don't have yet an idea. We don't have a thesis, but I think the direction is going to be technology in its place in the world, right? Now, the thesis itself is complex, but we'll break it down as best we can. Now, the thesis is essentially, in its very simplest form, a statement that says, I believe something, and this is why I believe it, right? That's essentially what it is, but not in those terms, obviously. So you establish an idea, the thing you're going to talk about, your noun, right? The tax policies of the current administration. This is the thing I want to talk about. Now, what is it? What claim am I going to make? And the only way to make a claim is through a verb. So if they threaten to reduce the tax burden on the middle class, okay? When you make a claim, every claim has to be explained. There's got to be an implication. What is the implication of this? How can I prove it? Right here. By sacrificing education and healthcare programs for everyone. Now, when you're looking at a thesis, you really are looking at a what, how, and why. What am I trying to say? How is it true? And why is it relevant, or why does it matter? When you're looking at a thesis that is that complex, you've got a what and how and a why. But a thesis can be a what and a how, or a what and a why. Meaning, what am I trying to prove, and how is it true? Or what am I going to prove, and why is it relevant, or why is it important? When we're looking at a thesis, we also want to keep certain things in mind. Don't state the obvious. That's not a thesis, that's an observation. Do not ask a question where your thesis should be. Can you ask questions? I guess, but they're not really conducive to keeping the conversation going. So I would say stay away from questions altogether. But a question is definitely not a thesis. Can a thesis be a question in a narrative essay? Sure, but we're not writing those. Your thesis should not be unexplained. If you don't explain it, you don't have a thesis. You have an unsubstantiated claim. You gave me an opinion. Great. What you need in order to have a thesis is a because. Don't be vague, right? Every time you're vague, it comes off to the reader as if you don't fully understand what you're trying to argue. Don't offer a plot summary. When you do that, well, all you did was give me an overview of the thing you might be analyzing, but you didn't tell me exactly what you mean by it, right? A thesis is in itself opinionated, but it has to be something that can be proven with some sort of evidence. So you shouldn't just offer an opinion that is pure conjecture. Don't be too broad or too complex. Your thesis should be appropriate, answer a specific question, take a specific stance or a position on a topic. I should be able to read your thesis and say, I think he believes A because of B and C. It should be something debatable, and it should be focused in accordance with the length of the paper, right? If you have a very large thesis, it's very complex and it's great and it's awesome, but you don't have the time to carry it out in the essay, then it fails. So, a thesis statement, here are some examples of what I mean because there's so many styles of writing. There are four main modes of writing. Narrative, analytical, argumentative, and informative/expository. This is the synthesis type essay. So we will mainly be focusing on argumentative essays, but the styles of writing and these types of thesis statements should also be addressed here. Check out the PowerPoint that I've sent you already in Google Classroom in order to see this slide so you can pay attention to it a little bit better. Now, when you're looking at your thesis, you should probably ask yourself the following questions. Is it substantial, right? Meaning, does my reader have even the chance to say, so what, right? Is it supportable? Have I given evidence to prove my idea? And I'm not just saying repeating my claims, because many times we make a claim and then we make other claims to validate those claims, but claims don't validate each other, right? It's like, I believe it because it's true. That's not evidence. So you got to offer some sort of support, right? Is my thesis precise? Meaning, have I narrowed it down to something very specific, right? Is it arguable? Or is it just a statement of fact or a statement of observation, which is not a thesis? And is it relevant? Meaning, is it responding to the assignment, which is very important whenever you're responding to a class assignment. Now, when we're looking at the body paragraph, this is really what we're looking at. We're looking at shapes. The first one was the upside down pyramid. This one is a circle, right? And what we're thinking about really is the circular nature of making claims, providing supports, and then providing insight into the relationship between that claim and its evidence or its support. And it should feel like this, right? A constant flow of claims and support and insight and claims and support and insight. That's what it should feel like. How much of each one? That depends on the essay, and we'll talk about that right now. Now, body, one or more, it doesn't matter how many you're writing, but a body paragraph essentially is structured in a very specific way, right? What, how, and why. A lot of body paragraphs begin with a general statement of what I'm going to prove, which is my evidence from the thesis. The thesis said, I believe A because of B and C. Now, what are bodies 1 and 2 are? What do they become? B and C, my evidence. So now my body begins with a claim that I will endeavor to prove. And after that claim is established, my what, now the evidence is established, my how, prove it. How does it make sense, right? And then by the end of that body, you've got a why, which is, what does it mean? Why is it important? Why is my evidence so important in supporting my claim? So counter arguments are also very important, but I will dedicate another video to that. They are crucial in argumentative essays, which is, again, the one we are writing. Now, we're looking at conclusions altogether. And remember, this video is meant to be an overview of the writing. There will be other videos in the series that explain each one in greater detail, but this one is supposed to be an introductory video. Now, the conclusion should feel like this, meaning the opposite of the introduction. Begin with something narrow again, meaning go back to that earlier thesis perhaps, and now reflect on it, but then walk your way out of the essay. Walk your way out of the essay. If you end your essay still talking about your essay, you're doing it wrong. You have to end your essay connecting the things you've talked about in there on the paper to something larger in life, something more thematic, perhaps something more meaningful, right? Writing should take us to life, and if it doesn't, it fails. So when looking at a conclusion, you can follow something like this. Maybe echo the thesis to begin with. That's that narrow part that I told you about. Then start slowing down, wrapping up, right? You shouldn't end at the end. You should begin to end before you end. So your penultimate sentence should feel like, hi, everybody. Okay, well, we're done. I'm going to start wrapping up now so that the end doesn't seem so abrupt. And the very last sentence, the very last thought should be a meaningful close, a meaningful idea through which you culminate the larger thematic issues that you've been discussing. Now, Again, this was the essay breakdown that I covered today. I talked about intro and body and conclusion. Go back to the PowerPoint so you can check it out, and make sure you stay tuned for the other videos.